Statistics. It is an extraordinary figure that surprised not just obviously the Treasurer and many others, but it also surprised all of the analysts in the markets. The seasonally adjusted growth figure of 1.3% is a surprisingly strong number, and we hope the trend continues. This does demonstrate the resilience of the Australian people in the face of a flawed government. It also demonstrates the resilience of the Australian economy in the face of a number of challenges. The strong data reflects higher consumption of goods and particularly services, and particularly by households. Essential household items like food and rent have been significant drivers of this component of growth. Mr. Swan often says that the mining boom belongs to someone else. Well, today the mining boom belongs to all Australians. It's reflected in the fact that we had strong final demand in both Western Australia and the Northern Territory relative to other states. This is not the time to make conditions more difficult for the mining industry. It is not the time to put a new tax on the mining industry. Manufacturing continues to experience tough conditions with output falling again. This is the sixth decline in manufacturing output in the last 8 quarters and comes on top of ABS data released on Monday showing a further sharp fall in manufacturers' profits. And we say again, now is not the time to make life harder for a particular part of the economy that is doing it tough by introducing the world's largest economy-wide carbon tax. The forecast doubling of this year's budget deficit to $44 billion, combined with the 0.75% cut in the cash rate by the Reserve Bank over the last 2 months, seems at odds with these extraordinary numbers. However, I do want to reiterate, the Coalition welcomes these numbers. It wants these numbers to continue. It expects the government to do everything it can to make these numbers a reality for the rest of the year, but we fear that the carbon tax, the mining tax and the government's own incompetence is going to make that a challenge.
Are you suspicious that this is an economic mirage?
Well, no, the numbers are the numbers. I totally accept that the numbers are the numbers. Imagine how well our country could do if we had a good government. Imagine how well we could do. It's great testament to the Australian people, but it also it reflects, when you go deep into the numbers, reflects the fact that other industries like manufacturing and so on are doing it pretty tough, pretty tough.
So you don't think there'll be another revision that will make these figures look not as good in a quarter's time?
Look, I'll leave that to the statisticians. It is extraordinary, though, that the Reserve Bank put out a statement yesterday identifying modest domestic growth as an issue, and today we have these extraordinary numbers. And it also reflects the fact, why has the government got a doubling of its budget deficit to $44 billion in the same period that we have 1 quarter of 1.3% growth? It comes down to the fact they're a bad government. And I just say again, imagine what our nation could do if we had a decent government.
Surely they deserve some credit for this, don't they?
Well, you know, the government's own language is at odds with these numbers. If you look at Mr. Swan's comments just in the month of May, how many times he referred to struggling Australians and Australians under cost of living pressure. And he says the government understands not everyone is sharing the benefits of a growing economy. For many Australians, it feels like it's someone else's mining boom. Well, Mr. Swan wants to take credit for these numbers. It is everyone's mining boom. It's not Mr. Swan's, but now he is launching a campaign against the miners, and he's been doing it for some period of time. Why would you want to slaughter the golden goose?
Do you admit that you got it wrong as well? You were saying that the interest cut rate showed a a poor economy? You seem to suggest otherwise.
Well, yeah, you have to rely on the information provided by the Reserve Bank and the information provided by the government. You also should rely on what you hear from business. This all makes it an extraordinary result. We talk with business all the time. We talk with consumers all the time. We get the same headline data as the government. This is an extraordinary result. And imagine what we could do as a nation if we had a decent government.
On interest rates, can you guarantee that if you are Treasurer under a Tory-led government, that the banks will have to pass on the full interest rate cut that the RBA does?
We're not going to go down the path in government of raising expectations and then failing to deliver. What Australia wants is stability, certainty, predictability. If we had those factors in play coming out of Canberra, we'd be doing even better. The fact of the matter is that we've got a dysfunctional government running a functional country, and we could do a lot better. Imagine how well we could do if we had a good government.
But aren't you admitting that all you can do is what Wayne Swan does, which is kind of put some pressure on the banks, almost shame them, but nothing more?
We have proven in the past that when it comes to banks passing on interest rates, we work with the banks to get the best result for consumers. Mr. Swan's got to be careful with his words. He is the one that stood here or stood before the Australian people yesterday and said the banks should pass on the interest rate cut in full. And as he was speaking, the Bank of Queensland passed on only part of it. So if the Bank of Queensland isn't listening to the member for Lilly from Queensland, quite frankly, why would you expect anyone else to believe him?
The New South Wales figures aren't as good as the rest of the state. You were saying, imagine if we had a different government federally, what the result would be. What do you make of this government and how it's been dealing with this state's economy?
Well, I think the New South Wales government is doing a great job. I think what they've done to try and get the state back on track is extraordinary in a relatively short period of time. People need to understand that you cannot reverse the bad deeds of a long-term government in a short period of time. And the New South Wales Labor government was just about the worst government we have seen in Australia in the last 50 years. And to turn it around is climbing a gigantic mountain. But Barry O'Farrell and his team, I think, are doing a hell of a lot of good. I think they are doing a lot that is not being properly recognised. They have a lot of reform in areas like transport and health, simply in big reform in restarting the wheels of good government. And it takes time. It takes time. It's not easy. You can't rebuild Rome in a day.
You're looking pretty comfortable behind that podium. Imagine what the government was doing if perhaps you had been leading it.
Well, I was never going to be leading the New South Wales Liberals, and I think they've got the best person for the job in Barry O'Farrell. And you know what I want to do? I want to be Treasurer and give Australia the sort of government that'll make us even better.
Those who have criticised you for running an economic scare campaign, is it as easy as you like?
No. Look, the scariest thing in Australia is Wayne Swan. And quite frankly, if you look at his words over the last few months, it confirms it. Look, if everything... today the Treasurer is suggesting that everything is very rosy in Australia. If it is, why are they handing out cash to people and telling people that, you know, it's pretty tough out there? And that's why we, the government, are borrowing money to hand you cash. There's mixed messages coming out of the government. On the one hand, they're saying, yes, it is tough, we're handing you cash. And on the other hand, they're saying in today's figures, things are extraordinarily good and we, the government, deserve credit. I'd say to you, Wayne Swan doesn't exude confidence. He's not someone that, if you're in the trenches and he blew the whistle, that you'd readily jump over the top for. Imagine what we could do as a nation if we had a strong, decisive, predictable and stable government. Thank you.
So that was the Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey live in Sydney at State Parliament there, responding to the better-than-expected GDP figures released earlier today. They came in at 1.3% for the March quarter, so that's the 3 months to the end of March, when the expectation was it was going to come in at 0.6%. Mr Hockey concedes they are, in his words, extraordinary figures, but he's saying they could be much better with a coalition government. So let's now take a listen to what the Treasurer Wayne Swan said earlier. He called a media conference about half an hour after the GDP figures came out, about 11:30 this morning Australian Eastern Standard Time. He says the numbers are exceptional and confirm the strength of the economy.
Well, I think the country should have a bounce in its step today. What a great day for Australia, and what a stunning set of figures. I think these figures send the loudest possible message to the world that Australia is the strongest performing developed economy, bar none. To have growth of 1.3% in the March quarter and the strongest through the year growth since 2007 is simply a stunning achievement. So whilst you've got European countries which are going backwards, other countries, developed economies around the world with very high levels of unemployment, Australia has surged forward in a remarkable way. We have 7 Eurozone economies in recession, as well as the UK, and many more developed economies which are crippled by unemployment. This result says something very special about Australia, and it says something very special about our people, about our resilience, about our hard work, and about our capacity to face up to the worst that the world can throw at us. It does all of those things. Yes, we do have challenges, but what we see here is resilience, and we are an island of growth in the middle of global uncertainty. We have here the best combination of strong growth, low unemployment, record investment, contained inflation, and of course falling interest rates. So these numbers do say something about all of us. They are numbers about which every Australian can feel proud. They are proof that something special is happening in our country, and of course they prove that we are all bigger than the doomsayers and the naysayers in our community.